We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including all kinds of NHL trade talk for the offseason, as well as some UFA updates. Trade talk today focusing on teams like Pittsburgh, the Rangers, Montreal, Nashville, Vancouver, and a few others. Plus, we got a big announcement today. All the participating teams in the Olympic Games announced their first 6 players on their rosters. We'll discuss some of the top teams and who were selected in that front. Plus, we have a few signings around the NHL, plus a few front office moves, and the latest, like I said, on UFAs, including guys like Marner, Bennett, Mangiapane, Taves, and others coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. Let's get started first with the news we got earlier today on the Olympic rosters. Of course, as you probably are aware, all the participating countries were announcing their first 6 roster players for the upcoming 2026 Olympic Games today. It was going to be announced periodically throughout the day. By the middle of the afternoon, we were going to have all teams. I did discuss that in yesterday's video, in case you missed that. So there is a dedicated video going over all 12 countries. I'm not going to do that here again in this video, but I just want to outline some of the top names and take a look at some of the, I guess, the countries that we kind of focus on a little bit more on a regular basis through the NHL. So Team Canada, no big surprises there. We're Connor McDavid, Nathan MacKinnon, Sidney Crosby, Cale Makar, Sam Reinhart, and Braden Point. Thought maybe there was a chance we get Brad Marchand in there, but you really can't go wrong with those 6 players. Ultimately, it's kind of no-brainers in a sense. So really nothing shocking there at all. Team USA consisted of Matthew and Brady Tkachuk, Austin Matthews, as well as Jack Eichel up front, Charlie McAvoy and Quinn Hughes in the back end. 5 out of the 6 players were the same as what they confirmed for the 4 Nations when they announced the first 6 players for that tournament. The only difference now is Brady Tkachuk is confirmed at the beginning instead of being confirmed later, and Adam Fox, who was confirmed earlier on for the 4 Nation, is not at this point. He's still very much in the mix. I know Bill Guerin was asked about that and said that, obviously the 4 Nation tournament this past season wasn't quite up to Fox's standards that he's seen in the past. He's still very much in the mix for a roster spot and heavily considered, but not going to be picked for the top 6 for right now. The Swedish team is going to be led by some pretty prominent NHLers, including William Nylander, Victor Hedman, and Rasmus Dahlin on the back end. Joining Nylander up front, you get Adrian Kempe, Lucas Raymond, and Avalanche captain Gabriel Landeskog. That one was a bit of a surprise. Not shocked that he's wanting to play in the tournament after his comeback in the playoffs. Not the least a little bit surprised that he'd be included on the team. Where he's played so little the last few years, I thought maybe he would be added later to make sure that everything was still progressing well. He get back playing regular season hockey next year and all that. Maybe a guy like Philip Forsberg or something would be the confirmed player now, but at the end of the day, he's confirmed, and that's great news for him. That's just thrilled with his return to action and how everything's played out for him. And the Finns, of course, heavily powered by Dallas Stars teammates Mikko Rantanen, Mir Heiskanen, Esa Lindell, their Finnish Mafia there, as they call it. It was a strong contingent within this top 6. Joining them are Panthers captain Sasha Barkov, Carolina Hurricanes Sebastian Aho, and goaltender of the Predators between the pipes, UC Sero. So all 4 of those countries who participated in the 4 Nations, like I said, are more commonly discussed here on the channel. I know there's a lot of other countries that have some NHL players, but not as many. So I just didn't want to go into all 12. It would take up a lot of time here right now. But I do have a dedicated video where that's been thoroughly covered earlier today. So check that out. If you haven't already, let me know your thoughts on the selections. And if you think any countries, any teams made any glaring omissions or made any mistakes with who they've selected. A couple of front office pieces of news. We got the New York Islanders today confirmed they've hired Ryan Bowness to be an assistant general manager. Ryan Bowness comes over from the Ottawa Senators. He was with the Senators for the last number of years. We had gotten word at the end of the regular season that the Sens and Bowness were mutually agreeing to part ways. Ryan Bowness was one of the few remaining front office people that were from the previous regime of the Senators before the ownership changed. And of course, like I said, they've slowly kind of brought in their own people, which is really not surprising. At least pretty much every time you see that kind of happen in sports, that always is the way things go. In the beginning, Steve Staios, the GM and president of the Senators, gave Ryan Bowness a lot of credit, was very fond of his work, kept him around for a while, whereas a lot of other guys were let go earlier. If I'm not mistaken, his contract was coming to an end and just decided it was time for them to continue bringing in more of their own hires, and Ryan Bowness was going to seek other opportunities. Like I said, it was mutually agreed upon. He was mainly the GM for the AHL team in Belleville. I don't believe, from what I've heard from this hiring with the New York Islanders, that that's going to be his focus in this role, because I think he's also taken on the role of Director of Player Personnel with his AGM post as well. So Ryan Bowness is well respected. Obviously, his dad's Rick Bowness, longtime NHL coach, very smart hockey family, hockey lifers. Like I said, just great people all around. For the most part, I think his work in Ottawa would be considered relatively good. So I think at the end of the day, the Islanders got themselves a real good person, and I hope the work aspect works out as good as or better than he did with the Senators. The Calgary Flames have also made a change in hiring within their front office. It's also an internal promotion now. They've appointed Peter Hanlon to be an assistant general manager. Prior to this, his role was vice president of communication. So he's obviously got a big change in role there in Calgary. A couple other pieces of news involving players. The LA Kings have re-signed goalie Phoenix Copley to a one-year, two-way deal, league minimum at the NHL level. In Toronto Maple Leaf prospect Ronnie Hirvonen is heading back to play in Finland. I know there was a time at the draft a number of years back when they got Hirvonen and Topi Niemela, because there was a trade between the Leafs and the Senators where the Leafs got these two picks to get these two players. Ottawa got Tyler Kleven out of it. I know there was a lot of times where the Leaf fan base really grilled Ottawa for making that move and helping the Leafs land those two players, but now neither of them are in the NHL, and Kleven's an up-and-coming pretty big defenseman for the Sens, so it's worked out quite nicely. I know at the time it didn't look good, but it worked out well for the Sens. Some of those Leaf prospects in that time frame haven't quite turned out the way they were hoping for, but I know Hirvonen's gone through a lot personally as well, so it could have certainly played a role in his development, which is unfortunate. Some UFA chatter around the NHL before we get into the trade talk. A couple of the more prominent names today we learned Capitals winger Andrew Mangiapane is likely not returning to Washington. I mean, I don't think the door is completely closed, but he's definitely going to be testing free agency, so he's not going to expected at this point to re-sign with the Capitals ahead of July 1, so he'll be out there fielding offers from other teams and see where it goes. Obviously, Mangiapane is a player that's, for the most part, should be a decent complementary piece on a middle six for a number of teams. He'll definitely have options for sure. Jonathan Toews, of course, the veteran making a comeback after a couple years away from the NHL. The belief is, the latest intel is that it's down to pretty much his hometown Winnipeg Jets, and the other team that's getting the most attention is the Avalanche. So, there's other teams that are definitely interested to some degree. He obviously, as a free agent and has not played in the league this past year, he's able to have conversations with teams now. I mean, he's not expected to sign anything before July 1st, but where he's not on an expiring deal, he can have conversations sooner than other players that are waiting for their deals to expire as of June 30th going into July 1st. So different scenario. But right now it appears Winnipeg and the Avalanche are the two main teams that are expected to be in the running for his services. Elliot Friedman's reporting today as well. When it comes to Sam Bennett and the Panthers, while most people believe that they'll ultimately get it figured out and that Bennett will return to Florida, mainly because it just seems like such a perfect match with how he plays and how the team plays. I'm not saying he wouldn't be successful somewhere else, but you know how some players just don't always have that same fit and the grass isn't always greener type of thing? I don't know. To me, it just makes sense that he needs to be a Panther. Belief is that they're trying to do a deal with Bennett similar to Carter Verhaeghe on an 8-year deal around $7 million, but that's not going to cut it anymore according to Friedman. I think Bennett's just had way too much playoff success to accept that kind of contract. I mean, at the same time, you look at who else is ahead of him within the Panthers' pay structure. Outside of Verhaeghe, then you get to the Reinhart, Tkachuk and Barkov deals, and there's not a huge gap between those three players. But, ultimately, is he going to be the highest paid on the team? Because if he were to go to market, there's probably teams out there that would pay him more than what they're making. But like I said, he's got the no state tax in Florida, which obviously gives him a little bit of leeway. And then on top of that, the fit. So we'll have to wait and see. I still think that they'll probably work it out, but considering where negotiations were last time they had talks, it just seems like it's not a foregone conclusion that they get it figured out. When it comes to Mitch Marner, we've heard lots about the fact that most people believe he's leaving and he's done with the Leafs. And if you needed any more proof, there's confirmation today that Mitch Marner has canceled his big summer charity event through his foundation, which was originally scheduled for July 10th. So that tells me that he's, not expected to be signing with the Maple Leafs. He's not expected to be there. It probably would be very awkward. And we'll see what happens with future, things done through his charity arm. But, Marner canceling his charity event, to me, it's just yet another signal that there's no chance he's coming back to Toronto. And then Ottawa as well. Quick update on Claude Giroux. It's really not a big update, just that the belief is Giroux's looking for a 1-year contract, so it's kind of confusing why they haven't quite hammered it out yet. My gut feeling says it's right around figuring out a bonus structure to add to the salary. Chris Johnson on his show was talking about the fact that he thinks ultimately they'll get it figured out because there's a mutual interest, and Giroux doesn't really want to go anywhere else. So at the end of the day, both sides want it to work, so they'll probably get it figured out. But it's taking longer than expected. There is a slim chance he hits the market, but even if he does, still doesn't mean that they won't get it done. But ultimately, if he's not signed by July 1st, they may have to make other choices. And then, of course, money could get tied up. Maybe there's no room, right? So that's what you kind of worry about. If you really want to get a player done, you got to get ahead of it and get it looked after. But it's kind of, the way CJ put it was this, a little bit of a dance and negotiations going on back and forth. There's still plenty of time, so it's not a concern. But I think Sens fans are a little antsy just because they thought it'd be such an easy slam dunk. And so far, it's proved not quite to be that easy. So we'll see what happens. Now, on the trade front, lots to talk about on that front. Let's start with New York Rangers and the latest on centerman Mika Zibanejad. Now, we've heard lots of chatter from a lot of New York media suggesting after the Chris Kreider trade that Zibanejad probably would be the next longtime veteran to go, and that he might be more likely to accept a trade now that his good buddy and longtime teammate is no longer in the mix with the Rangers. Well, that certainly appears to be kind of debunked now and not the case at all. Of course, Mika Zibanejad's wife, Irma, spoke out to media and did a short interview and basically confirms that it sounds like to me that Zibanejad's not going anywhere. So basically she says that that a lot of people are talking in the newspapers and not really confirming their sources properly. She says that Mike Sullivan, the new head coach of the New York Rangers, made a point to fly over to Sweden to visit them in the offseason and have some good long chats with Mika. So why would he spend all that time going to see Mika in Sweden if they had every intention of trading him before the season starts? Also went on to say that they're in the process, they just got like a new property in New York. Now, there was some talk earlier, which made people also think he was leaving because they sold their existing old place. So they're like, and they made a big profit on it. So the word was that, they must be leaving town. Well, that's not the case. Yes, they did sell that place, but they bought another one. So obviously, not everybody had the full story here. So they just got a brand new house. Mike Sullivan just flew to Sweden to meet with them. Some Rangers fans that would know better than I would claim that he had a really good relationship with David Quinn. David Quinn's returning as an assistant coach. It sounds to me like they're trying to fix Zibanejad's game and to help him get back to what he was, not trying to push him out the door. Now, maybe they realize too that he has all the say here, and do they need yet another veteran? And I realize Chris Drury, because all the insiders have said Chris Drury, ultimately, if he wants him out, he will find a way. Look what he's done to other players. And I don't dispute that. That has happened, but they really don't need to take that approach. Like, they've created a toxic environment, in my opinion. And, going about things differently would probably be wise and beneficial. And it certainly doesn't seem to be the case with Zibanejad. So to me, at this point, it would be pretty shocked if Zibanejad is indeed traded. Now, Josh Yohe, the Pittsburgh outlet, no. I also want to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins, the latest updates from Josh Yohe of The Athletic, talking about Evgeny Malkin in the future. Certainly makes things sound, because there was other reports that we talked about in the last day or so as well, selling off some veteran pieces. And it really sounds to me like the Penguins absolutely would. I think if they could get their way, and if Crosby was willing to leave, I think they really want to tear things down. And it sounds like they're kind of going to do it anyways, and they're going to kind of tear things down around him. He can stay, but nobody else is really going to stick around by the sounds of it, because the reports before were that Raquel, Carlson, and Rust were all having trade conversations around all of them, and any or all could be moved before next season. And the report today from Josh Yohe says that this is definitely going to be the last year of Evgeny Malkin in Pittsburgh. It's unknown and unclear at this point if Malkin wants to continue playing in the NHL, or if he wants to retire, or does he want to go play in Russia in the KHL? I know a lot of the Russian players seem to have interest in doing that before they retire. So it's not really clear what Malkin's plans are beyond the current season. I believe he'll turn 40 this year. So, he could retire. It wouldn't be shocking news by any means. He's in the final year of his contract. But the story here for sure is that even if Malkin wants to continue playing, he is not going to be offered a new contract with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and this will definitely be his final season as a Penguin. So clearly, like I said, then it'll be down to Crosby and Letang. I know I listened to Colby Armstrong talking on one of the Sportsnet programs he was on today or yesterday, and they were asking him about this report, and obviously he knows Crosby. They had a lot of mutual friends as well. And he said that he's heard nothing to the contrary, that all indications are Crosby is going to finish his contract with Pittsburgh and has no intentions of going anywhere else. He kind of wants to ride things out and be there to kind of hand things off to the next generation of Penguins when the day finally comes that he's going to hang them up. So obviously it sounds to me like the Penguins management and Kyle Dubas are trying to make things as, I'm not sure what the word would be, but, they want to make it so that they would kind of maybe change his mind. They're not going to come out and say, hey, would you leave? Or, hey, could we please trade you? But they're going to make it so that it's, not competitive, that they're kind of tearing things down and not desirable, if you will, to be on the team anymore. I don't know if Sid will ever change his mind. But just knowing how they're going about things certainly seems, like they really want to tear things down and they really kind of want to go into tank mode. That's what it looks like to me. So guys like Raquel have been linked to teams in the West like LA and Vegas. Rust, they've had a variety of teams inquiring on him. I haven't seen any specific teams linked just yet. I know there was talks again. I've seen a few more articles popping up about Carlson. Could he head back home to Ottawa? Maybe, I guess, but it's probably unlikely. When his contract is up and they can sign him for cheap, if he wants to do that, that probably would ever be the only way. I know it's nostalgic to think about. I was a huge Carlson fan when he was there, so certainly it'd be fun to see. I'm not sure he's the perfect fit for them right now. But the talk was if they retain 50% of his income, because if they're going to be bottoming him out and they're going to be going with a young team, they're not going to really be too concerned about the cap. So eating 50% would be not a big deal for them. Knock it down to $5 million. Would Ottawa be interested in Erik Karlsson at $5 million? Well, maybe, I guess. But if they didn't have Nick Jensen, I know Jensen's injury is kind of throwing things for a loop here, but probably still not likely going to happen, but it's an interesting concept nonetheless. At the end of the day, though, the Penguins are looking to move out as many veterans as possible. So we'll have to see where everything goes on that front. In Vancouver, still more talk about the future of Thatcher Demko. Vancouver media saying there's really no indication at all that they're talking contract extension with Demko, and there still seems to be a possibility he could be traded this offseason. Of course, they're in a situation now where they could lose a few players, like Brock Besser's a good example. Seems unlikely to sign him. Suter's probably pretty unlikely to re-sign too. I know there's a good chance Garland might leave after this year if he's not traded beforehand. So they're definitely going to be weaker in the forward group. And the belief is that if they did move Demko, they would kind of want to get a top 6 forward back, ideally, or maybe they move him for a real good defenseman. They were really pretty keen on Josh Norris out of Ottawa when he was there, trying to move him, trying to bring him to Vancouver. And, of course, that never ended up happening. Sent him to the Sabres for Dylan Cousins instead. Could they bring him from Buffalo? I don't think Norris is completely happy in Buffalo, to be completely honest. I don't know that on any kind of a good authority, but just you could tell the body language and everything when he was there. It just seemed like he was so out of place. I think if he had to pick between Buffalo and Vancouver, he'd go play with one of his best friends in Quinn Hughes. So, I wonder if they revisit that. Would that be something? Buffalo could certainly use a goaltender. Now, they also have links to Bo Byram there. I mean, that would be a bigger deal, of course. They're not going to get Byram and Norris for Demko. So I don't know how that would work out. But, certainly Demko might have injuries in the past, but so does Norris. So from that perspective, maybe it's risky on both sides. Obviously, the Sabres would have to get a contract extension because Norris has a long-term deal. So that, is a completely different contract scenario. So hard to say what happens. That's just kind of spitballing on my part. I mean, we know that the Canucks have been linked to those players, and we know that Buffalo could use a goaltender, and we know that Demko's name is out there. So that's just kind of me connecting the dots saying, I wonder how that would work out. So we'll see where that goes, if it goes anywhere. And in Montreal, there was some talk from TVA Sports proposing a trade about how Montreal might be able to bring home a French-Canadian player, as well as getting another high pick in the draft. And that's Jonathan Marchessault out of Nashville, who we know there was reports before saying that if the Predators were to trade him, that he'd be agreeable to go to the Montreal Canadiens, where obviously it's home province, and that he wouldn't mind playing there to finish out his career. Well, obviously there's been some chatter lately that Marchessault may not end up getting moved. It's hard to say. Probably sounds like there's just not a lot of options he'll consider. But the proposed trade was that Montreal has 2 middle-of-the-pack first-rounders with the 16th and 17th overall picks. They're suggesting that they take on the full contract of Marchessault and get the 5th overall pick for 16 and 17. It was I'm pretty sure you're going to have to add to that. Nashville might be willing to put some kind of sweetener on the Marchessault contract, maybe, but not 5th overall. And you're getting 16 to 17. Now, that's a pretty big drop back. To me, it'd have to be a higher pick, or you'd have to add in a pretty interesting prospect that they really like and think could be a big impact on their roster. So I'm not sure who that is. Are you going to include David Reinbach? Are you going to include Logan Mailloux? I don't know. I mean, I still don't know that Nashville does that trade. That's a pretty valuable pick at 5th overall. I think Montreal media, sometimes they get a little ahead of themselves with some of these trade proposals. I thought it was interesting enough to bring it up and to see what everybody thinks. We've seen the link before of Marchessault to Montreal. I'm not entirely convinced it's going to work, but if they could get this pick out of it, I guess it makes sense, and I can understand why they would do it. I don't see Nashville doing that trade, though. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. I think Montreal would have to add a couple more pieces to it to really make them really think twice about it. But let me know your thoughts, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.